Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking all about the specifics of preparing for placement. Now, hopefully you've watched all of the other videos that I've completed and put out there on placement, but today is going to be very focused on that preparation. So if you're about to go on placement, this video is going to be right up your street. So without further ado, let's roll it. Okay, so you have the exciting, stressful, worrying, but amazing, up-and-coming placement. So placements are that. They are really exciting. Most of us will really look forward to our placements, but at the same time, they can be really quite nerve-wracking. So what I wanted to do in this video is break down for you some of the key things that I think you should do to prepare and not do to prepare for placements. Now, before I start, I'm going to be covering my top tips, but I want to give credit to my wonderful guests that I've had on already on the channel on placement series. So there is a whole selection of videos already on this channel which cover the areas of placement you're likely to find yourself in, and I've brought onto the channel placement educators to give you top tips around those placements, including respiratory, neuro and MSK, just to give you kind of an idea of the specifics right from the horse's mouth, as it were, right from the clinical educator's mouth. But today we're breaking down just those areas I think you could do to prepare. So we're going to start right off the bat with communication. So what I mean by communication is your contact with your clinical area. So you will no doubt have ahead of time the information you need to be able to make contact with your clinical area, the practice educator or practice clinical contact where you're going on placement. And honestly, you really must make contact with them in good time. And I'm talking a number of weeks beforehand, wherever possible. And that's for several reasons. First reason is first impressions and awareness of their time and their workload, etc. So if you make contact with your clinical educator in plenty of time on asking questions, which we'll talk about in a second, then they've got time to respond amongst their own workload that they've got on a day-to-day basis. If you make contact the day before and say, "Hi, I'm James. I'm coming to your workplace tomorrow, and I'm going to be your student for the next 5 weeks." They've got no time to answer any questions. They've got no time to really prepare themselves amongst everything else that they've got going on. Remember, these people who can be your clinical educators are full-time physiotherapists as well as being your clinical educator. So having an awareness of that from the off is a really important sort of thing to show as well, and it won't go unnoticed from your clinical educator. So if you think of your assessment and your marking, if your placement is marked, that actually starts before you've even turned up, potentially, in terms of setting their kind of thoughts and expectations on who's turning up to placement. So get in touch with them. Now, what sort of things are you going to ask your clinical educator? Well, that's really down to you. My advice is take a piece of paper and start thinking, what do you want to know about your placement? Do you want to know what uniform you need to wear? What shoes you might want to wear? You might want to know, is there parking? Is there a good bus service? All the basic stuff. What timings? Just confirm what times you want me to be starting, what time do you want me to arrive, what time will I like to be finishing each day? Are you going to be working weekends? You know, there's a possibility of that. So just get an awareness, get upfront knowledge of what you're going to be doing. And as I say, think about this ahead of time. So you've got time to have a piece of paper and write down those questions over a few days as they spring to your mind. Another top tip is there's no harm in asking them what you're likely to be doing on the first day. And I think a lot of things, including placement, they worry us more when we don't know what to expect. So if you're sitting there thinking, what's my placement going to be like, especially if it's your first placement, now's your opportunity to ask your educator for a bit of a heads up. So what's likely to happen on my first day? Is there a schedule? And if they can let you know, they can. If not, it might just be kind of going with it on the first day. But it'll give you a bit of a heads up on what you need to know. Other things, there might be some recommended reading that they have for you, things that are good to look up, clinical guidelines. Obviously you want to be trying to do some of this yourself, but there's no harm in asking them, have they got any top kind of things that they would recommend you reading? All right, so you've got as much information as possible. Okay, so that's kind of your most important bit. It's a bit you're probably going to do really early on. Next up, so you've got your placement area, you know where you're going to go, and at that university the chances are people in the year above you have possibly been to exactly that placement area. So see if you can find out and see if you can ask them how was their placement experience, what did they do, what were they expected to do, etc. Gives you again a little bit of an idea. There is one big caveat to that though. Remember, everyone will have a different placement experience even at the same placement with the same educator. Just as if just think of your patients. Every patient will respond differently to the treatment that you do. That's why it's so important that we assess patients prior and after treatment so we can see if we've been effective. There's no guarantee. So just think about that person who's been on that placement, may have had a great experience or a not so great experience, but that's their experience. The idea of talking to them is just to kind of be a sponge, absorb what they've got to say. You might wring some of it out, but it just gives you a bit more information and might be able to help you. The next bit is a really, really important one. It's something I've mentioned many times in my videos, and I'm going to steal the phrase that Christy Robinson used in Placement Series episode 1. And that is a well-being plan. You need a well-being plan. So if you're going on placement, the chances are you may well be staying away from home, and you may not, as Christy said in the video, you may not have access to some of the things that you do to keep your mental health on track and to keep you feeling good. That might be the gym, friends, family, whatever it might be. You might not have access to that as you would have done if you were staying at home. So think about ahead of time, weeks, remember this is weeks before you go on placement. What can you do to support your mental well-being and your health and well-being on placement? Think about it in advance. Now, that might be making sure you've got your running shoes so you can go for a run. You don't need anything other than that to go for a run. It might be that you take a musical instrument that you really enjoy playing, unless it's a grand piano. That's possibly not so practical. But if you've got something that you know relieves anxiety, that relaxes you, that you enjoy, you love doing, and that could just be simply a computer game. It doesn't matter what it is. Think of stuff that you can take on placement that's got nothing to do with placement, that you can switch off from and just relax, because it's really important. You need downtime. I've been there and I've made the mistake, and I'm telling you now, sitting at home or away, wherever you are, where you're staying, after each day on placement and sitting for 4 or 5 hours reading textbooks, research papers and working is not a productive way to spend your time on placement for the majority of people. Everyone's different, and there will be some people out there that do benefit maybe from that, but I think they're few and far between. You need to look after yourself and your mental well-being and balance things out. You're going to start picking up habits, as has been said in some of the other placement videos. Pick up habits now on placement that you will take forward into your working life. So start as you mean to go on. You are not going to spend the next 40 or so years of your career as a physiotherapist working 9 till 5 and then studying from 5:30 till 12 o'clock at night. That's just not sustainable. So think about, what are you going to do other than physio when you're on placement? There's some really good stuff. My very best placement was when I was training for a half marathon. I was running 6 times a week, and I was doing sessions which may have meant I was running for over an hour of an evening, and that was my best placement, because when I turned up at 8:30 to the clinical area, I was ready to go. I was fresh and feeling good, and I was doing something I loved in the evenings. Of course, I was still doing a bit of reading and I was doing a bit of research, but it wasn't everything I was doing in the evening. I had a good balance, and it really helped. And as I say, I've been there as well, and I've done the opposite, and it did not work. I was drained, I was tired, and I couldn't absorb everything during the day of my placement. So think of that well-being, think of your sports, your hobbies, your interests that you like, and make sure you've got access to them in one way, shape or form when you're away on placement. Now, the next thing you want to do is you want to be starting to think, okay, that first day on placement and even that first week on placement, you want to be as focused on the placement as you possibly can. So are there things that you can do in advance that means you don't have to worry about them during that first day or two? And one of those things is meal prep. So my advice is, if you or someone you know can cook up a few lasagnas, some cottage pie, some pasta bakes, and you can freeze them, portion them up. If you've got several days, 3 or 4 days, or even 5 days, a week's worth of food, so you can get home of an evening after placement and just chuck it in the microwave and eat, you get a good meal. You're not relying on takeaways or fast food, which is not necessarily beneficial when you really need to be on top form. And it's nice and quick and easy, one less thing to worry about. Next thing on the food front is do your weekly shop, or do your shop before you go on placement. If you're staying somewhere new, the last thing you want in the first few days of placement is trying to work out where the nearest supermarket is and then spending an hour and a half in the supermarket doing a shop. Not what you want to be doing when you first go on placement. So try and do that weekly shop beforehand and take it with you, or have it when you're first starting placement. Next thing is uniform. So once you've spoken to your educator, you know what uniform you're wearing, or you've spoken to your clinical team at university, have it ready for that first day before the first day. And maybe if you've got to say you've got 3 polo tops or whatever uniform you've got, get them ironed or washed and then ironed before the first day. It seems so obvious, but you do not, first of all, you do not want to be turning up to your first day with a creased top. It just doesn't look good. It's not a great first impression. So get it ironed, and the last thing you want is to be ironing on your first day of placement. Again, I've been there, and all you do is you get hot and sweaty just before you're about to go for your first day. It's just not conducive to a good, calm, stress-free first day. I say stress-free, it's going to be stressful, but let's try and reduce some of it where we possibly can. So we've done that. So we've got, and then think of anything else you can do to reduce the burden on you on those first few days. So the big question we get, and I certainly get, is how much reading and how much studying should I do before I go on placement? And really it's going to be individual. It's going to depend on which year you're in. It's going to depend on how long ago it was that you covered that area of placement in university. So for instance, if you're going on an MSK placement and you've just finished a module on some MSK stuff, maybe you're going to need to do a little bit less kind of reading up. But you might find yourself going on a placement that is covering or is specializing in an area that you actually haven't covered for 6 months at uni. That's quite possible. So in that circumstance, you're going to have to bring out the books and have a little bit of a catch up. However, keep it simple. You are not revising for an OSCE or an exam. You're revising to make sure that you're kind of up to speed and you've got a bit of basic knowledge about what you're going to be seeing and what you're going to be doing. You know, real quick tip, Emma said this on one of the videos on placement series. If you're on a respiratory placement, make sure you've got a basic respiratory assessment under your belt, your A to E. Just make sure. You don't need to know all your blood gases, as like Emma said in the video. Have those written on the back of your ID card. You don't need to memorize those. Don't waste your brain cells, as she said, for replacement. But get your A to E respiratory assessment, so you just at least know what are you going to be looking for in that assessment, so you can get, you can hit the ground running. If you're doing MSK, start just thinking about your basic assessment of your active range of movement, your passive range of movement, your testing of muscle strength. And start thinking about the anatomy, a little bit of your main key joints of your neck, your shoulder, your hip, your knee and your ankle and your lower back. Just have a little bit of an idea as to how you might assess some of those joints. Again, and this comes back to this bit where you're not an expert, and your clinical educator, your practice educator on placement, is not going to expect you to be an expert. And if you think about it, when you're a band 5, 6, 7, 8, advanced care practitioner, first contact practitioner, consultant physio, whatever you are, you're never going to be the end result. You're never going to know it all. And as a student, you've got to remember that you're not expected to know it all. So don't put yourself under that pressure to know everything before you go on placement. There's a reason you're going on placement, and that is to learn. You're not there to work, you're there to learn. And that's a really important message to kind of get out there, because it should take some of the pressure off. That's not to say that you don't want to be prepared and be able to and have some knowledge of the area and of what you're going to be doing, but you're not the finished article. You're still a student, and again, as I say, no matter what level you are in physiotherapy, you need to get very used to quite quickly not knowing it all, and the sooner you realise you don't know it all, the better, because then you're more open to learning, making mistakes, which you will do on placement, and some of them you'll look back on in a few years' time and you'll laugh even if you cried at the time, but you will make mistakes and you'll learn so much from them. So don't be afraid of that. So make sure you're kind of giving yourself a little bit of an idea. Remember as well, this comes back to contacting the placement area really ahead of time. You give yourself more time to prepare. So if they've turned around and said, actually, we're currently on the ward, in a respiratory ward, and we've got currently got 3 patients with COPD, and we've got bronchiectasis. You might be thinking, oh, do you know what? Bronchiectasis, right, what's that again? Go back to the books, get a bit of an idea of your pathophysiology, roughly what it is. What are your treatment options, your assessment, again, back to your basic assessment, and just there you are, that's it done. You might only spend half an hour on that area, that subject, that kind of condition, just to brush up and just to get a bit of an idea. Preparing as well, something else that I think is really worth doing is textbooks. If you're staying away, what are you taking with you? What's worth taking with you, what's not? Now, I've done both options here. I've taken very little and wish I'd taken more, and I've taken everything and wish I hadn't, especially when you're packing up at the end of placement and you've got these bags of books that you're thinking, why did I bring these? They haven't come out of the bag. I've not even read them the whole time. So you've just got to think, what do you need? And this is going to be personal to you. If you're one of those people, a bit like me, who when you go on holiday, you like to take your whole wardrobe just in case, then maybe, take all of your textbooks just in case, if that makes you feel slightly less anxious. But do think about what you're taking and what do you need for that clinical area. Again, have a think, what has your placement educator said already that you might want to take? Another top tip on what to kind of look up is clinical guidelines. Yes, you may have been taught the pyramid of information in terms of you right at the top there, your systematic reviews with meta-analysis, etc. And right down the bottom there, you've got opinion. But in and amongst that, you've got your guidelines, your clinical guidelines. So if you think of your NICE guidelines, so have a look at those. You'll know which area, you may know some of the conditions. See if you go onto NICE and search those NICE guidelines and see if you can find a few guidelines around those conditions. Really good, informative bits of information that will inform your clinical decision making and your clinical reasoning. Obviously, you've then got research, which is up and above that. And depending on where you're at with your degree or your master's or whatever you're doing, and your apprenticeship as well, you might start feeding in some of that research to help you with your clinical reasoning. But see, the NICE guidelines are a really good starting point. If you're taking books with you and you've got them out of the library, make sure that your library at your university allows you to take them away on placement. And if you are, make sure they're not going to expire. The last thing you want is the stress of the library book suddenly expiring without you knowing about it whilst you're on placement. A lot of libraries now allow you to renew online, so that's fine, but just have a bit of an idea of when they're likely to renew. That will help massively in terms of your stress levels. Make sure before you go, do a recce. If you do live locally to your placement area, go and have a drive-by, all right? Go and have a little look. Just visualizing your placement will help. Google Street View, it's amazing. Just have a look on Street View and use it to have a little, nosy around your placement area so you know what you're looking for. Just having an awareness of what the building looks like, what the car park looks like, the road outside, buildings around it. It means when you arrive on the day, your first day, it won't be brand new, it will be familiar. So whether you've done that in person, going there in a car or on Google Street View, really good idea just to get a bit of an idea of what your placement might look like. Okay. Make sure you know where your accommodation is. Obviously, I know it seems silly, but do look at that. And if you arrive in the day before, arrive a bit early. Prepare by getting some good sleep. This, as a physiotherapy student, physiotherapist, future physiotherapist watching this, you must automatically or hopefully already know how important sleep is for us as human beings. And should you want to learn the best and feel fresh on your first day, try your best to get a few days of good sleep under your belt. I take this from kind of running and racing as well. You can almost guarantee that the day before a race, you're going to have a rubbish night's sleep because you're stressed and you're nervous. Same thing on placement. Just accept the fact that the night before placement, your first day, you're probably going to sleep really badly. But if you've slept really well for a few days beforehand, it's not such an issue. Same thing with food. Get some good food under your belt. Make sure you've looked after yourself for a good few days before you arrive on placement, and then you'll feel as fresh as a daisy can be going on placement. Key thing to remember, placements are possibly the most enjoyable part of your physiotherapy degree and your studies. They are possibly the place where you will learn the most, more than even you do at university in the classroom, and they're exciting and they're fun. And I think one thing I want you to take away from this is I want you to enjoy and look forward to placements. So in your preparation, let yourself get excited. You're about to go and be a physio. You're working so hard at the moment to train to be one. Placement's your opportunity to be one. Go and be a physiotherapist. But you're going to go and be a physiotherapist where it's okay to make mistakes. I mean, we would do it anyway when you qualify, but as a student, it's even more okay to make mistakes. And you can do some really fun mistakes that you'll look back on and laugh, and it will just form your journey that you'll look back on in years to come, and it will be something of a fond memory. So enjoy your placements, enjoy the preparation. If you've got any ideas on things I've missed, put them in the comments below. If you've been on placement and you found something that really worked for you, pop them in the comments below. Let's share some good ideas. If something's not worked and something's gone terribly wrong and you feel okay to share it, again, pop it in the comments below as well. We've all been there, we've all made mistakes, and we learn from them, hopefully. As always, please hit the subscribe button, and if you think this has been useful, please share it with other colleagues at university, amongst your peer group, and amongst everyone as well. It's good to share this information. Hopefully it's been of use to you, so you can hopefully prepare a little bit more systematically and hopefully relieve some of the anxieties and nerves so you can go and enjoy placement. Placements are amazing. As an hour educator myself, I love having students, and your educator will love having you there. But top tips as well: be enthusiastic, smile and talk to your educators and all of the team around you when you go. Going to do another video coming next, is going to be actually the specifics of your first day and your first week on placement and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. So hopefully that'll tie in really nicely with this. So enjoy placements out there, everyone. Have a fantastic time. Stay loving physiotherapy, and I shall see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.